Welcome to Kandid Konversations with Dr. Kelly, where we dive deep into the conversations that matter most to your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Dr. Kelly Utenham, a passionate advocate for brain health and wellness. And here on this podcast, we explore candid conversations about life, health, and the stories that shape us. Whether it's about mental health, sports, or simply navigating everyday challenges, we keep it real, raw, and relevant. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode.
Wonderful to see all of you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So, I'm Dr. Kelly. I haven't gotten a chance to meet, any of you in person, but on the phone, I was able to speak with Jeff and get a little acquainted with him. Tanner, I know a little bit about your story, but Mrs. Habecker, if you could share a little bit about yourself and your experience, I'd love to hear.
With like Tanner and everything, or
Tanner and everything, let me ask a more specific question.
okay.
As you were going to events with Tanner and signing him up for different activities and sports, was there any ever talk or literature or anything that was passed out to you or Jeff about concussion or risks or anything?
No, it was very taboo. Like nobody really talked about it. No one, um, it wasn't even, I don't want to even say it wasn't even the back of my mind, to be honest. Like we just thought football was just a fun game for kids to play, and it really wasn't that serious, that it was safe. So to me, I didn't really think about the safety part of it at all.
Okay. Did you notice anything with Tanner and his behavior at all leading up to the injury?
No, Tanner has always been a quiet kid. So that's why we did sign him up for football, to kind of get him out there to interact with other kids. And actually, he opened up great with his teammates, and he really enjoyed playing up until the incident.
Understood. Tanner, how was football for you leading up to the event?
Fun. Really, I don't know.
Do you remember your coaches or anybody else that was an adult saying anything to you about protecting your head or anything like that regarding concussion?
Honestly, I don't think there's like really anything in place for that. Like, there's none of the coaches really taught how to properly hit, like tackle or not lowering your head, stuff like that.
Mhm. Okay. Were there times on the field where you kind of felt like maybe something's not right, but you're like, I'm going to push through because I don't want to let my team down?
No, I actually took myself off of the field when the hit actually happened. Because I remember one coach was yelling at me to get back on the field. So I just walked past him and sat down.
Wow. Do you remember anything or much of the
Uh,
incident?
couldn't really like keep my eyes open. The sun really hurt, like bothered me. Uh, dry heaving. And then yeah, I don't. It's like fuzzy for me to remember like the whole section of it.
Understood. I imagine that it was scary. Were you scared?
Uh, not really scared, just more like confused of what happened.
How did you feel about your recovery? Like getting answers, going to the doctors?
Long process, I guess. Like
Okay.
really long.
Was there any point where you felt like there was a moment of relief?
No.
No.
Towards the end, yeah, but during it, no.
Okay. Can you tell me some of the specialists that you went to?
Oh my.
Dad, feel free to pop in if you need to.
There's a list of them. So we
Um, I know he did speech therapy for a while. As for how long, I'm not quite sure. Jeff, you might be able to um
Yeah, I think we had started speech therapy initially at Hershey Medical Center after meeting with one of their lead neurologists up there. And the drive up to Hershey pretty much,
would wipe him out.
yeah, it wiped him out. So like the drive affected his cognitive ability, and when we got there, his mindset was so drained from driving the 45 minutes to the medical center that they couldn't even do the therapy sessions. So um we waited actually from probably the point from when we went to Hershey till a few months later when Wellspan hired a pediatric neurologist um, in our hometown. And from there, they sent him to a speech therapist who was actually part of Wellspan. So he saw them. I think it was like 3 years.
Okay. How long after did they refer you to a speech therapist after the incident?
Well, they wanted to originally start it right away, and then that didn't work. So I want to say after we left Hershey, it went from maybe I think we went up there in April, so it might have been 4 or 5 months. There
Okay.
was a period of 4 or 5 months where they couldn't. We had to wait for a neurologist in the area because they were going to refer us to speech therapy down our way, but it was trying to find that, and there was a big mess, and there was a lot of lulls in between. And I think had they had something in place where we could have had the care closer to home and everything was lined up and put in place, I don't think Tanner's recovery would have took as long.
That is good insight. Good insight.
And that's one thing I have to say as an organization for the organization that Tanner was playing for, um, never had no resources to like, hey, there's clinics for in case your child gets a concussion or anything like that. There was nothing. And that was kind of disappointing as a parent going into this sport and not having any resources. Even after his injury, was there any resources from the organization at all given to us? Like, hey, um, where to go? Like, we were just lost.
There was actually no help from them.
No, no.
Absolutely none.
Um, after Tanner's concussion, was at he was home for about 3 weeks out of school.
No,
Yep.
I think it was
Um,
2 weeks, and then it was like half days.
you went back
Going
half
over
days,
here.
yeah. And I think what saved us was Tanner had an IEP, a learning support, which then when they do that, they test his where he is on the scale, and then they tested him after his concussion, and it dropped significantly. Like
It was a
his
39% drop in his IQ based off the
yeah, like
testing.
so that's when we knew that this was something more serious than just a bump on the head. And then that's pretty much how it snowballed into all of the therapies and the doctor's appointments and the things like that.
So I did get to hear a little from Jeff. I'm going to go back to Jeff because I want to hear more of his experience from this, but I would love to hear a mom's perspective of were you present when the incident happened?
Absolutely.
So could you take us back there and like what was going through your head? You see it, and as a mom, like what's going through your head?
It was hard seeing my child laying on the ground and not being able to help them was very scary. My emotions were all over the place. And I'm one of those moms that when my child plays a sport, I'm their number one fan and I'm up there rooting for them. And I'm yelling, like, how are they allowing these kids to play like this? Like, how are they allowing these kids were much bigger than our boys. And seeing your child picked up off the ground and slammed to the ground it was horrible. Like horrible. And they allowed these kids to continue to play. They were playing very, very rough. Not Nothing was being called. No, like it just was not a safe game at all. And as a mom, that broke my heart because there's other kids on that field too. So yeah, it was very heartbreaking. And actually, I was the one that actually took him to the emergency room um right after that. So
Oh, I have goosebumps. Oh my gosh. Um, I cannot imagine. So what was the process after? Like you saw it and then like was there coaches called police and told them to call the ambulance, or did you take them yourself?
I took him in my own personal vehicle because actually they never even stopped the game. They continued to play. Um, they pretty much wanted Tanner to get back out on the field, and I said no. I'm taking him to the emergency room. I'm taking him now. I mean, he was like almost he was dry heaving as we're walking to my vehicle. Like this kid, you can tell, was not right at all. And as a parent, I was furious with the coaches because at that point it was just about the game and not the kids. And why I say it was about the game was this was their last game of their last season. Like, and they were winning all their games. Like they were a really good team. And that's why they went up against a really tough team. But they put the winning in front of the kids. And that infuriated me. And even their own safety. Like putting a game over the kids' own safety was horrible. It was just horrible.
Yeah. Jeff, I'm getting teary myself. Jeff, could you please walk me through your experience? You were there too, weren't you?
Yeah, so I was actually on the sidelines. I was one of the assistant coaches to what was going on. And so when he took that hit, the initial hit when he hit was with the crown of his helmet, and it literally lifted him up off the ground. So the back of his head hit the ground and it literally bounced. Like you watch this all take place. And he eventually tried to get up. And when he got up, you could see that he actually went down a little bit to his knee again on the ground and stood up. And you could tell something wasn't right away. So actually, believe it or not, one of the coaches from the opposite sideline came out to him first until we got out to him and we realized that there was something wrong. And they just wanted Tanner to get back in there and keep playing. And I kept walking with him off the field. We actually took him from the field to, I believe it was a snack bar at that time, because it was really sunny out and it was really difficult to find out whether his eyes were dilating to light or not and see if we could actually indicate whether there was an actual head injury going on. So we took him in there, and the whole time he's dry heaving. He can't keep his eyes open. We get in there and we can't even get him to keep his eyes open long enough to check his pupils on either side to see if they were reactive or equal. So we loaded him in my wife's car and I had to go back and get all my stuff. So she went to the emergency room and I followed. You have to remember we live in a rural part of Lancaster County here in Pennsylvania where, our local ambulance companies they're probably 5-10 minutes out from the football fields of where we're at. So by the time you get a dispatch through and get them to a field, you're looking at 10 to 15 minutes. It was easier for us to load him in a vehicle and transport him to the local hospital, which is 10 minutes up the road, to get him there because we knew there was something wrong. Um, the weird part about it all was by the time my wife and Tanner got to the hospital and he was back there being evaluated, I walked in. This is 15 minutes after this all took place, maybe 20 minutes tops. Tanner's up talking. He's answering questions to the doctors and he's not dry heaving no more. So all the symptoms that were exhibited on the field were completely different once we got to the emergency room. And I think going forward, when you look back on this, I think some of him being diagnosed was kind of misleading at that point, because they like, oh, well, we did a CT scan, everything looks okay. He just probably has a mild concussion, followed the family doctors. So that's what we did. And, looking back on that, the symptoms that they're exhibiting on the field are telling you a lot of what actually took place. And I think it was more significant than what we even thought. And when you listen to doctors, you're trusting all the local facilities, and some of these doctors are just emergency room physicians. They're not trained in some of that stuff either. Um,
And actually, the hospital that we took him to is not a trauma hospital.
no, we don't have our local. Yeah, our local trauma center is
About
in Reading. It's probably a half hour from where we live.
45
So
minutes away. Yeah. So we took him
yeah.
to the closest facility that we could get to.
So when you look at that, that goes into, he followed up with family doctors. They got him back in the school half days. We even went as far as getting Brain Steps involved. They're an organization that helps the transition from kids who have concussions or traumatic brain injuries to transition into school, get them accommodations set up. They help dictate what the child needs going forward while they're recovering from that injury. So they helped us a lot. They helped set up Tanner's IEP to make it what it was through that whole process for us. And believe it or not, I'm really glad they did, because as a parent, I really don't know what we would have needed. There's a lot of things that they put in place for him, like screen time, extended testing times. He could leave the classrooms before the rest of the kids did, so that the hallways were quiet and he wasn't in the hallways with all the commotion, because all that all that stimulation would trigger
The
concussion like
headaches.
symptoms and headaches and all this stuff to keep happening. So it was a long process. And then you go from neurologist to, we had speech therapy for 3 years, we had physical therapy for 3.5 years. That was through Novacare.
And they were wonderful.
Oh my gosh, can't speak enough about them. We owe
To
them a
be
dedication.
honest, a lot of Tanner's progress I have to give to the physical therapy.
Yep. He
So,
wore He actually wore glasses before that happened, and afterwards, it fixed his eyesight and messed the vestibular part of his eyesight up. So the physical therapist actually caught on to that right away, and things got bad while we were in physical therapy, because they were wanting to see that triggering of those symptoms while they were doing the therapy and trying to work through it. So there were times where he would, like, the next day he'd wake up and be in school, and they'd call him like, hey, he's having, like, he can't walk straight, he's having headaches, all this stuff's going on. But it was actually what we were looking for, because as you work through that, those symptoms start to get better and they get less and less, and the vestibular system starts to correct itself. So yeah, they did a wonderful job. We owe them a huge debt of gratitude, because without that, the road could have been very, very long.
so the physical therapist that Tanner worked with was either a vestibular specialist or had experience with the vestibular system and exercises.
He was a young grad, just outside of college, and he specialized in some of the vestibular system for concussion rehabilitation. So he did his job to the very fullest, and him and Tanner probably were more friends than anything during the therapy, and he pushed him like you wouldn't believe. And yeah, he did a really great job.
Tanner, can you tell me some of the exercises that you did in physical therapy?
A lot of like uh uh I know a lot of it was like holding a pen, trying to walk and like move your head at the same time by keeping your eyes on the pen. Like a lot of eye movement stuff.
Okay. And when it was starting to get bad, as your dad said, what was that like going through that? Was it scary, confusing?
I'd say more annoying than anything. Yeah.
Annoying is a good word. Um, Jeff, you are speaking my language. I'm hearing things like exhibiting signs and knowing about pupil dilation for an injury. So, could you tell me a little bit more about your experience with EMS?
Yeah, so um, I've probably been running with a fire company since I was 16 years old, but just recently I went and got my EMT certification. It's actually through the National Registry for the state of Pennsylvania. So I run ambulance in our hometown once 2 weekends out of the month, just to make sure that we support the community. But you know, while we were doing that, like before I even had that certification, I was an EMR, and after Tanner's injury, we took some of what we've learned. And listen, my wife could probably tell you the same thing. She'll account to this. Her and I probably could have been doctors after this all happened. With every specialist that we were at, and some of these, I'm telling you, we were on wait lists for 6 to 8 months, almost a year, to get down to Philadelphia to see Chop. And that was actually the last specialist we saw, and she was actually the very last one who was able to figure out why all this stuff was actually happening. So the 5.5 years of his recovery, Tanner had underlying conditions that were really undiagnosable at the time because he didn't have them, and he weren't exhibiting um, tall tale signs of, hey, this is what he actually has.
Like what? What signs?
Like social anxiety, autism. So he was really low on the spectrum to the point where you really couldn't pick up on it. But after the concussion, it brought that out tenfold. So like he was to the point where after the concussion, he was in his room. He wouldn't come out of his room. He wouldn't talk. He had to worry about depression at that point, which we did have him um, evaluated for because we were concerned as parents. Um, Social anxiety, not talking to anybody really, us, people, kids, friends. So those things came out, but they were the trigger for the reoccurring symptoms. So he would get dizziness, he would get fatigue, he had headaches, he had nausea sometimes, he had fogginess, and this would all happen while he's at school, balance issues, right? And it kept happening, and nobody could figure out what was going on. And we thought, okay, well, maybe it's the physical therapy, maybe it's the speech therapy, but we had to keep pushing through all that. And so we go down there, and she's like, well, she did this test. It took about 8 hours. We spent 8 hours down there.
What kind of specialist?
She was actually a neurologist, but she specialized in concussions and pediatrics, and she had this testing that was more of a cognitive testing. So she put him through this rigorous 8 hour test, and I couldn't even tell you what was actually on it because it was just her and Tanner that went in the room, and he took this test, and basically she came back and said that he has social anxiety and that she feels like he would be best suited if he was on a medication for it. So we started a really low dose of paroxetine, and as soon as we did, it was like you flipped a light switch. Tanner started coming out of his room. Tanner started talking a little bit and came out of his shell a little bit more. And he got cleared to drive a car. He got cleared to work full time. So all these good things started happening, but it took 5.5 years to reach that point.
So, what would you think, if you were looking at the situation, knowing what you know now, what would you have done, starting from being upset in the stands or on the sideline and then going from there? What do you think would have helped move this along faster? Like if you had that knowledge.
If you had that knowledge before, are you saying like before you had them on the field, or?
Not just yet. We'll get there. But
Okay.
right now, I want you to answer if you knew that you needed a neurologist who specialized in concussion, or that the doctors weren't going to be the experts that were expecting. and that you would have to go and actually search for one, those sorts of a thing. With physical therapy, because I believe you worked with a physical therapist who was not believing that it was because of the hit. So just
Yeah, we actually had two of those. We had one physical therapist that they sent us to who, once Tanner started exhibiting symptoms, they backed off on the therapy, and that set us back a lot. And I actually went back to our neurologist and said, "Look, I really don't think this is helping us. I think this is actually hurting us, and I would like to transfer to a different therapist." So we went to a completely different therapy company, which was NovaCare at that time. But looking back, had we had the knowledge and had the resources, and if an organization has kids that are playing football and they have these resources available to all the parents that have their child in that organization or on that field, you can make a very significant judgment call on where your son needs to go and what things need to happen. But a care plan is made up of not just one thing. A care plan for a concussion has multiple moving parts. And it is speech therapy, it is physical therapy, it is having a neurologist on board. And the problem with it is the neurologist that you need to see, they there are so many. We saw four in the total of 5.5 years. Hershey was the first one, and I'm not downgrading Hershey. I think they're a great medical center, but they went to a point where they're like, hey, well, this could be the new normal. This isn't going to change, and this is how he's going to be. And as a parent, I refuse to let that happen. That's not what we're about, and that's not the answer we were looking for. And my wife said the same thing. We're getting a second opinion. So we went to WellSpan. He did everything he could, and he basically said, look, I have him in speech therapy, I have him in physical therapy, and there's nothing more that I can do to help your son. He goes, I have exhausted all my options. So he reached out to his partner. She was WellSpan's lead neurologist in York County. So this is a county over from where we live. And we saw her for a little bit. She did a couple other things. I didn't really find them to be really helpful. They didn't really move anything along very quickly. And I didn't see any change in what we were looking at compared to what we had before. So the one thing that we did was we got on that waiting list for Philadelphia, with CHOP, and they have some really, really world-renowned neurologists and doctors down there at CHOP that are on the East Coast. They're some of the best. And we went down there and met with her. And then the second time I went down, we went to the main facility and she did that testing. And within a week, we had answers and we had what we needed on board. So having those things in place and knowing where some of these doctors are, and there's a lot of red tape too. We had good insurance. We didn't have to have referrals. We didn't require to have a doctor say, oh, well, he needs a referral to go to this doctor. We could make that choice on our own. So we did. And we just went to where we thought we needed to go. But other people in certain situations, their insurance may dictate where they have to have a doctor telling them, okay, well, you need a specialist. Well, if that doctor doesn't think that that specialist is necessary, they don't get the care that they need then.
Very true. So for families and anybody can answer this. And Tanner, I do want to hear from you for what you would say for other athletes. But for your parents first, what would you tell other families? Because good insurance is definitely something that not everybody has. And so what advice could you give as parents who would be looking for answers for their kids?
Research. Do your research. Research on concussions. Research facilities around your home that you may have to take your child to. Know where they are. Know what your insurance takes, where you can go and things like that. Just do your research. That's what I would say.
Thank you. What about you, Jeff?
Oh, to me, I think it's knowing. I think it's knowing what you're putting your child into, from start to finish. Um, and it does come back to knowing what hospital facilities are in your area. We have a hospital here where they handle some of the basic stuff. Anything that's not really basic, you're going to Lancaster General or Reading, which are trauma units, which are a level one trauma unit. Sometimes it may be worth that, but you just need to take them to the trauma unit and not go to the place where you think is the closest, even though it sounds like the best option at that time. If they're stable enough, then yes, that trauma unit might be a better option. Um, I know that a lot of people's insurances, they have in network, out of network, and all I can say to that is, at the end of the day, it really shouldn't matter. It really shouldn't matter. There's no price tag on safety. There's no price tag on your child's well-being. So, um, you need to make the best decision. And as a parent, um, you're your child's advocate. Um, and when they don't know what's going on and they're in a situation that they don't understand, you got to be the one to say, "Look, you're the voice of reasoning. You know, they're looking for you to guide them. They're looking for you to make sure that they're good and safe and that they're going to get better." Um, so yeah, research is a big thing. And all I can say too is when you go into getting into these organizations or having your kid play a sport, um, even researching the organization and what is that sport they're getting into, and before you sign them up, ask those questions. What do you have in place for this? Do you guys have a protocol? Do you guys have sensors and helmets? Do you guys do baseline testing? There's so many things that got to be talked about before your child should step on that field. And you know what? We didn't have that. They didn't have that in place. There was nothing that was talked to us about when we signed that up with Tanner. So it's important to know those things.
Absolutely. What do you say to, well, you two have obviously done your research and are very well versed in this and passionate about raising awareness. So I've talked to Jeff about this. I'm just so grateful for parents like each of you who are willing to join this. But in doing this work, I have come across parents who get upset when they hear these facts and this information. They don't want to believe it. They don't want to buy in. And they'd much rather just kind of ignore it and push past it and just continue the way that things have always been. What advice would you give to parents or families with that mindset?
You want to take one, Heidi? I'll add on to it.
That's a tough one because I mean, I guess if they're set in their ways, I mean, I know some parents have to see it. And I've read, and this is just so sad, like I've read news articles and things like that about kids that have passed away playing this sport, and it breaks my heart because I know kids love to play sports and if you're passionate about football, like if you have to be able to play that sport. I mean, um and to hinder your child from doing something that they love is hard as a parent. Um but in some aspects, your child's life has, like Jeff said, has no price tag on it. Like there's no, you know, I don't even think if I put my kid in bubble wrap that I would feel safe. Like it's just the sport is a rough sport, and I know it has grown over the years and have gotten safety things put in place, but it's still not where it should be, to where there should be no children getting having to endure this stuff, concussions, head injuries at all. I mean, something needs to be done to stop that. So I don't know. Like I would say, just I don't know. I guess do the research, see how many kids actually do get injured playing this sport. So yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, to that question, for like the parents who don't buy into it, they have to ask themselves this question: is at the end of the day, when their child does play that sport and they do take that hit could be life changing, life altering, or life ending. And it goes in those steps. We're very, very fortunate that we have Tanner with us. Was it life changing for us as a family and Tanner? Absolutely. Tanner was 12 years old at the time, and it changed his life forever. He'll never step foot on another field playing any contact sport because he's not allowed to put himself at risk of being hit in the head ever again. That's how significant the hit that he took was. So if he takes another hit, he may not be able to talk, walk, get himself dressed, feed himself. We don't know. The unknowns are scary. And then you have to look at the other aspect. We do have Tanner. I had the opportunity to talk to Ryan. He was from West Virginia. And you spoke with him too, because I got him in touch with you. Ryan doesn't have a son here no more, and his son was playing football, practicing, and his story is heartbreaking. So, you know, as a parent, they need to be educated. They have to ask questions. They need to know what they're getting their kids into. And that's why, even though people might think that, oh, well, you know, every time football season comes around, this conversation comes up for me. And my wife thinks that sometimes I just go off the wall a little bit with it and may just reach out to anybody or anything. But to me, it's near and dear to my heart. I mean, this has changed our lives forever. I mean, what do you do with a 12-year-old kid who is not allowed to do anything that he normally does as a 12-year-old kid anymore? It's going to change you. We had to start doing things differently. So as parents, we started kayaking. We started going hunting, fishing, camping. So these things changed us. We became people who we thought we never were going to be, you know what I mean? Do things we never did before. Um, Is it a good thing or bad thing? I can't say it was bad. I think it made us better parents. I think it made us better individuals. Our kids enjoy what we do with them. Memories are made, and we still live life big, but there are people that don't have that opportunity. So we we made sure that Tanner's accidents really changed things, that how we do things as parents. But the organization that we were with had a new president right after that happened. And he really had my back with some of the voice of reasoning that we brought forward. So we got a bunch of people, and I'm saying a bunch of people. We did a lot of fundraising around here, and we raised about $30,000. And we worked with Athlete Intelligence out of Seattle, Washington. I worked with Riddell out of Illinois, and we worked with they did some data analytics with sensors and helmets. Um, that data is really, really crucial because it tells us a lot that these kids can get concussions from repetitious hits, and they can get concussions from one hit. So it's not just those big ones, but it's also the small repetitious ones too. So we put them in our helmets. We bought helmets on the A-team level. We changed the organization. We wrote a concussion protocol. We bought an AED. I was their first safety coordinator that they ever appointed. They have it now. They still have somebody in that position. And I heard
Actually, they do, but they use WellSpan. So they actually have an athletic
trainer.
trainer on the sidelines now. So which they like Tanner, when he played, there was never no athletic trainer on the sidelines. There
Oh,
was pretty much Jeff being the medical personnel for the organization, and that was it. But the organization actually now has a trainer on the sidelines, which is a big thing um for the organization to have.
they're still using all that stuff we implemented. So this year I was told that for a few years, the coaches didn't like using the sensors, which really, I didn't like hearing that. But I was told that this year that they were told by their president that they must use them. So they are taking it pretty seriously. The sad part about it is we're just one little group in one little community. And how many more around these communities who don't have the funding and the resources and the knowledge, which that is the biggest component to this whole conversation is the knowledge. So if they don't have any of that, what are they doing for their kids and how are they handling their safety? And that to me is like, if you could change one person's life somewhere along the line, somewhere in our state or our country, then advocating and having these conversations and having these meetings are worth every last minute of it. And I'm sure if you ask Tanner, it wasn't an easy task for him. It wasn't an easy journey for him. And I'm sure that he'll tell you that he probably would tell you no other kid wants to go through that either.
Well, that's a perfect lead in because my next question is for Tanner. Just like I asked your parents, what advice would you give to athletes or athletes who were your age? I've heard of young people who say like, oh, like, thinking about dementia and when I'm, older, like in your 30s, like that's forever from now. Who cares? Let's have fun now. What do you say to kids like that?
It could happen to anyone.
It can happen to anyone. Yeah.
Uh, Honestly, I think schools should like be keep teaching these kids about brain injuries. What what are the signs that um what could what I I don't know. It's like hard. Uh,
What would you wish your school would have said to you or
uh,
your teammates?
Just having that conversation, huh?
what?
Just having the conversation, just talking about concussions, making you aware of it, right?
Yeah, and like teaching the kids and making them understand that if something ain't right, take yourself off the field, even if like the coaches are yelling at you to go back on the field, just ignore them. Worry about yourself. Something's not right. Like, don't keep pushing yourself through because that could end up getting you killed later on.
But your safety comes before
Yeah,
the game.
yeah.
Like that. Safety before the game. Thank you so much, Tanner. Um, like knowing what you know now, just in general, what information would you give? Research, do your research. I love that. Just closing thoughts. Is there anything else? Like last thoughts?
Yeah, like if you're gonna put your kid in a sport, you have to do that research. That's key. But also being aware of the risk factors, the dangers of it. If your kid does come home and something seems off, it's it's not it's not something just to be overlooked. Don't let it be overlooked because it's easy to do. Um, it's like you said, your brain is inside your skull, so it's very easy just to overlook it and play it off because you don't have a brace, a cast, whatever. And that does make sense because it is how it is. And a lot of coaches are out there and they're like, "Oh, well, you just got hit, shake it off, get back out there." Don't let your kid be pushed out there if he's not feeling right. He needs to say something, and then the parents should be the one to make that decision. It's not up to a coach to put you back on the field. Um, Ultimately, at the end of the day, yeah, they're a coach, but if the kid's not feeling good or something feels off to them, the parents should be aware of it right away too, because the coach isn't their advocate; their parents should be. Um, and just looking for different avenues to be that advocate. So, like, if you do have a child that does walk down the road like Tanner has, or in Ryan's shoes, doesn't have his son here, the stories need to be told. They need to continue to be told with other people. Ours got shared across all of NovaCare's facilities in the United States here. He was on the news. Tanner was a couple times. Those stories got to be talked about because the more they're out there, the better they are. You're going to get pushback. I will guarantee it. You're going to have people that aren't going to like what you're talking about. If you watch the movie Concussion, you'll find out that the doctor did get pushback. He had death threats on his life because they didn't like him bringing this to light because now there's players in the NFL who didn't want to play. So that goes down the whole chain. And there are some places out there that it is about the sport. It is about the game, and it's about the funding and money that they make and how profitable they are. But at the end of the day, you can't take that with you. None of it can go with you if you're not here. So is it really worth it? And I feel like there are ways to make this better. I feel like there are ways that you can make things a lot less significant. And I think that you can, if you have the data analytics and the time and the companies to spend time with you to work with your teams or your organizations, um, I think all those developments that are coming out and all the technology that's being advanced right now, there is a way to help reduce the risk. It's never going to take it away. And that is what the takeaway that every parent should remember, that we can make this as safe as we can, but you are the ultimate person at the end of the day who, if you see something abnormal after your kid comes off that field, even after we've taken every possible safety protocol or, you know, safety measure that we could, it may not just be enough to stop it from happening. So there's always going to be that chance. But there's a lot of work to do to get to that. I don't think we're anywhere close. These helmets, yeah, putting sensors in, okay, that gives you the ability to stop that second impact syndrome from happening, but these helmets are designed to stop skull fractures and they're not designed to stop concussions. So that needs to be looked at too. Rigid compared to soft. Ryan, I think he is really all for the Guardian helmet. The wrap that goes over top of it.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I think
NFL.
I think it's going to reduce the impact, and I think there's some significance to it, but um, it's not gonna take it away. So that's what needs to be remembered out of it.
It's a help, not a cure.
Yep.
Okay. Mrs. Habecker, any final thoughts?
Um, if you're going to sign your kid up for a sport or even athletes, know the risk. Know the risk within that sport. And really truly think about your future. The sport's only going to be here for a little bit. You're only going to be able to play this sport for a little bit, but you need the rest of your life. You need to grow old and prosper. Like, think of your future. I know it's fun in the moment, but you got to think of your future as well. And you need your brain to do that. So, you know, it's fun now, but remember, it's only a game and it's only going to last for so long. You got your whole life ahead of you as well, so you got to take that into consideration as well.
Beautiful words. Tanner, you want to take us home? Final thoughts?
Honestly think schools should start teaching kids in like health class about the brain itself. Like when I was in school, there's only like drugs and how the body worked, but nothing about the brain, like the brain, the brain itself. Uh, I don't like it, giving giving these kids the information that they need to know to understand, like the little signs that something's wrong. Like
I agree. Thank you. Well, for that, actually, interview done. Thank you all. Thank you.
Yep.
But just letting you know, for that reason, I've started Brain Talk Day. So the inaugural is one. The inaugural one is going to be this November at Northeastern University. They have a Charlotte campus here in North Carolina. And we're going to do exactly what we just got finished talking about. So I'm going to give a talk. I'm going to share and talk about raising awareness. We're going to have community leaders and their athletes and different coaches and start the whole process. And I want to have, there will be a clinic portion so that athletes and coaches can see that you can do the physical rehab as well as incorporate the cognitive piece, and have like some simulations so that people can put on concussion goggles and see what that's actually like and what, athletes may be experiencing, what they're pushing through. And when people are saying, be tough, just get back out there, like, well, it's kind of hard when your eyes are kind of catawonkus and you're walking sideways, but the expectation is to sacrifice yourself for the game and just push through and do it. So it'll be here in Charlotte. I know it's a long way, but you all are welcome to come. Once I get this interview to my team and they edit it down and everything, depending upon what clips they pull, I would like to have some of your gems played during the Brain Talk Day. So they will hear some of your experience and that this is real, it can happen, and just some of your wonderful advice. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. I will keep you posted on what happens with the Kandid Konversations and all of that, but it will all be what you are comfortable with. If there's anything that you can think of that you shared that you would like to be edited out or anything like that, please let me know. I'm happy to do so. I want you all to be comfortable and happy with the end result. Just thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, when's your book coming out?
End of November.
I was telling my wife about it. I was kind of trying to fill her in on it.
Yes. So it's called the 25,000 mark. It's not just a concussion. The 25,000 number is an homage to Dr. Amalu for finding it and having just that shocking stat of it being in the brain, being in that condition. It's a very scary number, but a very real number. And the goal is I can't give my talks to everybody everywhere. I'm trying to, but the book is just a way to like take some of this knowledge and at least start the conversation. So I'm doing a lot of interviews with a lot of different athletes, so I can't put everything in the first one. So I'm doing a series. So I'll have multiple books to come. But this first one is just talking about it, starting the conversation, including interviews, and then providing some guidance like what to do. So if you're going to go to the hospital, here's what you should ask for. If you're going to see a therapist, this is the kind of therapist that you should be searching for, the kinds of questions to ask. I mean, you all are a very special and unique case because you have the knowledge to look for a second opinion. I can't tell you the number of people that I've spoken with and they're like, well, they said this and this is what they said. That's like, you can get a second opinion, a third, fourth, and fifth. And you don't have to take what they tell you if you feel something different. Like, your body as the athlete, your child as the parent, and just taking what they say. Like, I can't imagine if you hadn't advocated and switched and got a second opinion. So I want other parents to have that. So there will be a guide, there will be a glossary to familiarize people with terms, looking for like guiding people on where they should be looking for these specialists, questions they should be asking, even getting an order. So I'm going to be doing this thing called the golden ticket, which is the order. So I'm saying, this is what you ask for. You go and you ask for the prescription or the order to be ST to evaluate and treat as indicated, and find out how long that prescription or that order lasts. Some last for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. But if you do have a secondary injury and you don't start seeing signs for 3 or 4 months in, and that's where the complaints are, you're being noticed, you still have that golden ticket. And so you can say, well, I remember that Dr. Kelly lady, that Brain Talk lady, she said something about we should get this checked out. And so at least you won't need to go back and start the process again. You'll still have that with them. So I've got all these ideas and I'm trying to just roll them out. So just the support that you have provided me, and Jeff, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. But we're doing this together, and I will keep you posted. And I want you guys to be as involved as you're willing to be. And just thank you.
Always
Sounds
on
good.
board to help. We're always on board to make some kind of change. I've been dedicated to it since Tanner's injury, and I just feel it's this is bigger than just us, right?
Oh yeah.
We're
Oh yeah.
one small family and one little tiny community, but this is a bigger conversation, and it needs to be had. So, um, yeah, and like I said, I know that you're starting things down there, but it'd be awesome to see it develop to the point where these talks start happening
globally.
global, like nationally. Like we get to get them happening around different states and stuff, and different schools in the areas. Especially like we're big here in Pennsylvania with Penn State and all that, and so like it'd be nice to have that happen. So we'll have to see how to make that possible, but.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you. I'm glad schedules aligned. We were able to have this conversation. But I travel, so if there are talks that you think of, I'm happy to come up. Ryan has asked for a version of the slideshow, so I said that I would load it up with my logo and information for people to reach out if they want a more in-depth conversation about it. So if you would like the same, I'm happy to share so you can start talking with Penn State or schools or whoever. But I do
Sure.
want brain talk everywhere because I think about DARE, and Tanner mentioned it. They talked about drugs and that sort of a thing. But I remember the red letters. I remember the shirt and the dog.
Yeah.
Dare to be different, and say no to drugs. And they're gonna, when they offer you, this is what you say. And so I want brain talk to be like that for being in schools, so that in however many years, 20 years, if something happens to themselves or to someone that they know or to their kids, they'll say like, oh, I remember that brain talk day. So I want to go into the schools, teach, give a version of the talk, and then have the mini clinics like I'm going to do for the first one at Northeastern, so the kids can practice and see that the exercises can be fun and incorporate cognition, and then also have the grad students come out and do some screens so that they can know their status. And if they do have questions, then provide them with next steps. So lots in the
I,
works, but I
I
completely.
like I like the analogy with this dare. I think that if you can have that as a selling point to some of the school districts
Mm-hmm.
and say, look, you do a drug week, we should do a brain talk week for the sports that all your children are involved in here, and just have it with the students. I think you could sell this for a lot of the school districts to actually have people come in and talk to them, whether it's in our own communities or not. I mean, you're starting it down there, but um, if you get that talking out there, Ryan could roll with it out where he's at and see about getting schools interested, and you can build on that. I think it'll gain momentum. It just has to be built right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I completely agree. But those are the things that are in the works. And you have already implemented some things. So I'd love to have another conversation and talk about like who I should be talking to, who will need this information. So since you've already done great change and, raised money and gotten the sensors for helmets, like I know you have more experience and a guide on who to speak to in the community for that. So I'd love to have a follow up so that we could discuss next steps for what I should be doing.
Sure.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much. If you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk again and keep these conversations going.
Sounds good. Appreciate your time.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
All
you.
right. Have a good weekend.
you too.
Thank you for tuning in to Kandid Konversations with Dr. Kelly. I hope today's discussion left you inspired, informed, and ready to take on your next challenge with a clearer mind. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep striving for a healthier mind and a happier life. I'm Dr. Kelly, and this has been another Kandid Konversation.